Hey, Leslie here with Sew Practical, Sew Fun. Today, let's make sewing straight fun. Today I'm going to show you how to better sew straight, regardless of where your little guide is on your sewing machine. You'll still be able to sew straight. So first of all, let me take the foot off here and show you these feed dogs. When the needle goes up and down, do you see how they move together? And that's going to naturally make the sewing machine sew straight. So what are some variables to why it doesn't always sew straight? One is that the fabric is hanging off the machine, so it's pulling one way or another. This way it's pulling down, but if I'm sewing this way, depending on how much fabric you have falling off your sewing machine, it's naturally pulling this direction. So what I like to do if I'm doing that, if I'm sewing this way, I like to fold it up or even put something here so that it's raised up. You'll just have to know that this hand is going to have to hold it a little bit more control and expect that counter pull from the weight of the fabric. The other thing that could be an issue is you may be sewing past some of your guide marks here. So my suggestion would be to use some washi tape to mark your spot. Make sure you get that really straight. I'm lining up here and then just bring it all the way down. That way you have a good line to follow even when you're all the way down, looking all the way down here. You can still follow that line. I like to look closer to where the needle is. I'm usually looking right about here, but you can look down about here until you get to the end, and then you'll want to follow it all the way up this way. So let me show you sewing a straight line using this guide. And it's a light fingertip. You're not going to be grabbing the fabric. I see some holding it and pulling. Sometimes they do that because they're sewing too fast and they don't feel like they have control and they're trying to slow the fabric down. Use your feet, use the foot pedal to control the speed. And with your fingertips, it's a very light touch to control, especially when you're sewing straight. It's just a very light touch, light corrections. You don't want to correct super hard. You want to just very delicately, if I start getting off like this, just as I'm sewing, just very delicately bring it back. Then you don't get those hard lines in your correction. So let me show you sewing straight line using this guide. Do you see how the sewing machine naturally wants to sew straight? So I barely have to do anything. I'm just really holding here. I'm not doing much movement at all. And I'm just kind of following, making sure it's following this line here. And now as I get closer, I'm going to be holding it and following it all the way up. And I'm not looking here, I'm looking here. So let's see how my line looks. Looks like we got a pretty straight line. So that definitely works. That's a way to do it. Now, this is going to be the same principle if you're sewing on a machine like this, or if you want to up your game and get a professional or an industrial machine. So let me show you what you do on those over here. So over here, all the principles are the same. If I lift up the foot, you can see the feed dog, these two sides, it's going to naturally pull the fabric straight. The benefit of upgrading to a professional or an industrial sewing machine is you'll notice the edge of the machine is level with the table. So now as I'm sewing and I have extra fabric, I have all this space over to the side that the fabric will lay straight. It won't be pulling this way or pulling that way. As you start getting into longer pieces, like say you're doing a quilt all the way down, you'll want to roll that fabric up and keep it up here so that it's not pulling off the back. Same with the front. I like to roll it up and just keep it in my lap so that it's not pulling this way or that way. It gives me a lot more control. So let's do a straight line here, and let's use this type of a guide. This is a magnet guide, and it can be placed anywhere on the metal. I see a lot using this to do straight lines, but let me caution you what this is actually for. This is a guideline for your eyes. This is not for the fabric. So if you notice, if I stick it here and I want to sew, I can go right up and over it. I can go this way, without any effort at all. So you don't rely on this to keep your fabric straight. This is your eye line, just like using the washi tape. This is the same thing. I'm going to use this. I'm going to bring it down. I don't need it way up here. I need it more down here to guide me. So I'm going to set it, that looks good, right about there to sew my straight line. And so now my eye line is going to be here. I'm going to be making sure that I'm not this way or even up this way. I'm going to want to stay really straight with that guide. And then as I bring it up with my fingers, I'm going to be following it up. Again, this is a very light touch with your fingertips to get it to stay straight. See how I'm just 2 fingertips. Just like that. And finish it up. Let's see how we did. That looks pretty straight too. So that's another guideline that you can use. It's nice because it's movable. You can move it anywhere you like. So now that we've learned this control, this just fingertip control, let's do a curve and see how that goes using this same method. Okay, so now I've drawn this arch here. I'm going to follow this with my sewing. I'm not going to use any guides on this because with this fabric shape like this, as I get going, that guide's not going to work. See how it would need to be all over the place? So this is really a really good exercise to practice learning, not just sewing straight, but sewing exactly where you want to sew, sewing with control. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our best to keep this line right in between the 2 feet here, right into that groove where the needle is. And so I'm still going to do the fingertips. I'm still going to adjust everything with fingertips. I'm never going to be grabbing and pulling, definitely not stretching this fabric. This is not a stretch fabric. It'll do weird things. So you want to make sure you're just giving it that very natural curve on its own. So here we go. Here's the start. I'm lined up pretty well. And as I sew, I'm just going to be adjusting with my fingertips, just bringing it around ever so lightly, light touch here. And then if you need to stop and readjust your hands, instead of getting awkward, stop and then readjust your grip of where you need your fingertips to be. It should always be left and right. There should never be any of this or any of this, nothing right at the needle. It's just left and right of your fabric. And you see I did that really slow. If you're going to do something like this one time, go really slow. Take your time, make sure it's right. If you're going to do it over and over again, that's where as you get more confident, you can speed it up more. But you're going to want to definitely start slow. So see how not only is it an arch, but I don't have any drastic corrections. There's no zigzaggies happening front and back. It's just a really nice arch. And with the straight lines as well. So that's how you sew, not only in a straight line, but a curved line. Just really, that's how you sew in control. Make sure you're always in control of your fabric. Don't let your fabric get a little wild and hang off one side or pull itself out of your control. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more great sewing tips.